Hello, sword people. Welcome to the Sword Guy podcast. This is your host, Dr. Guy Windsor, consulting swordsman, teacher, and writer. Join me for interviews with historical martial arts instructors and experts from a wide range of related disciplines as we discuss swords, history, training, and bringing the joy of historical martial arts into our modern lives. I hope you enjoy this greatest hit episode of the show. You can find all the episodes at swordschool.com/podcast, and there's a direct link in the description to this episode's show notes. On with the show. I'm here today with Dr. Przemysław Grabowski-Górniak, and yes, I did practice that name for a little while before we recorded, who is an assistant professor at the Institute of English Studies at the University of Warsaw. His research focuses on the chivalric tradition of the late Middle Ages, be it chivalric romances or medieval manuscripts and treatises on the art of war, with a special focus on the English literary portrayals of Sir Gawain in the period of the 100 Years' War and the Wars of the Roses. His admiration for the Middle Ages goes beyond academia, as he is also a historical reenactor and a Harnischfechten instructor, combining his knowledge of the period as well as his experience in working with medieval manuscripts with a practical approach in order to reconstruct martial techniques of the 14th and 15th centuries. His current focus is on studying the traces of medieval English martial systems in the pages of the Middle English romances. And that's a hell of an introduction. So, Przemysław, lovely to see you again.
Great to see you.
Just to orient everyone, they've probably guessed you're in Poland, but whereabouts in the world are you?
Poland, Warsaw, to be specific.
And are you from Warsaw?
Yes, I was born in Warsaw, I live in Warsaw, and I work in Warsaw.
Excellent. So you know your way around. So it's no wonder that we met in Warsaw then.
No wonder, yeah.
So how did you get into historical martial arts?
There are two parts to that story, really. Mm-hmm. Because one thing is my grandfather, who was the man in my life, the one who really set the standard for what I'm doing now. He was a huge fan of history. And he would read to me stories, novels, books. I remember, as if it were yesterday, him reading to me The Teutonic Knights. It's one of the greatest, most celebrated works by Henryk Sienkiewicz, who got a Nobel Prize in Literature for another work. But, you know, the Teutonic Knights is a story of the struggle between the Polish kingdom under Władysław Jagiełło with the Teutonic Order. And it is a hugely important work for Poland because it was created when Poland was under the influence of foreign powers, including Germany. Right. And it was a form of a low-key sign of resistance on the side of Henryk Sienkiewicz. And then it was used by the communist government in Poland when they made it into a movie in the 50s to kind of follow up with the narrative of anti-Germanic sentiments and, you know, pan-Slavism and so on. So I was spoon-fed history by my grandfather. And the other side of the story is most men in my family are in some way related to the military profession. So my uncles, my father, the men in my family would be soldiers. They would work in Homeland Security and so on. I was the one who decided to go into the academia, but nonetheless I was pushed towards martial arts ever since I was a little boy. And I have trained, as it usually happened in the 90s, I trained the Eastern martial arts, the Japanese Koryu Bujitsu stuff. But in high school, I met a guy who was a member of a reenactment group, and he told me that they are meeting the fields of Grunwald, which was this site of the greatest military victory of Poland in the 15th century. And he told me they are putting on armor and fighting with steel weapons, that he is actually spending his free time hitting people with an axe on the helmet.
So Grunwald to the Poles is maybe like Agincourt to the English.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. It's
okay,
even
that puts
more
it
or
into
less
perspective.
the same moment. Yes.
Okay.
So,
and of course, Agincourt is actually in France, but you actually have Grunwald in Poland itself.
So it's very much in Poland.
More
yes.
Okay.
But the name itself is somehow ties to the fact that those lands were under the control of the Teutonic Order, which was, a Germanic, German knightly order, because Grunwald is not a Polish name.
Right, and so the Teutonic Knights are basically the bad guys.
Yes.
And the righteous Polish knights are the good guys who go and defeat them.
That's right, exactly.
Right, okay. I've got to get my white hat, black hat thing right. Otherwise, I could make some faux pas, which would alienate all the Polish listeners.
The long story short is one of the princes of Poland allowed the Teutonic Order to come to Poland and gave them an estate so that they could launch crusades against Lithuania and the Slavic nations on the eastern border of Poland. But they liked it so much that they coveted more, and they were increasing their influence on the lands around their main seat, which was Malbork. And at some point, Władysław Jagiełło, who was the king of Poland during that time, he decided to face them down in a battle, and that was the Battle of Grunwald, 1410. So, as I said, quite close to Agincourt.
Right.
And it is kind of a symbolic victory of Polishness against the encroaching power of Germanization, which was used to a large extent during the 20th century, where Poland had problems with other foreign powers taking away and usurping the territory.
Britain entered the Second World War because Germany invaded Poland.
Yes.
And we had a deal.
Exactly. So, when I heard from this guy at school that he's doing all those things, I decided I have to get in on that.
Oh, yeah.
Because I before that I trained Kenjutsu, and we trained with wooden swords, with bokken, and we would hit one another. But the image of a mass battle between guys in armor going full swing with metal weapons, that was just a dream come true.
I know exactly what you mean.
So that's how I got into reenactment. Then a new fad came around, the Bohurt, or Buhurt, and as it is more known in the West. And I immediately went in because that seemed even a better fun than the normal battlefield reenactment. And that also at some point lost its appeal, and I found my way into HEMA, which is currently the source of all the enjoyment in my life.
Okay, so you started out with sort of classic reenactment.
Yes. Went
into Bohurt, and I mean, listeners to the show should know what Bohurt is because I've interviewed two quite high-level Bohurt people, Dana Bergen-Wyman, I think, and Beth Hammer, and I'll put links to those in the show notes so that people can find them. And now you're doing like the more historical recreation of martial techniques as opposed to the competitive Bohurt or the performative reenactment. Is
Yes,
that fair?
absolutely. Nowadays I'm hardcore into Harnischfechten.
Okay.
So I'm digging deep into the fencing treatises and really working with that order.
What are your main sources? What sources do you use primarily?
So, Fior di Battaglia, Gladiatoria, Talhofer's Fechtbücher, and to a smaller extent, Paulus Hector Meyer.
Okay. And obviously Fiore is the best of those, right?
To an extent, I would agree with
you.
Unfortunately, the problem with Fiore is he doesn't really devote much space to Harnischfechten.
Yeah.
In his fight book. However,
you're supposed to read the whole book. You're supposed to do the whole thing, and a lot of the stuff that you do in armour is actually in the other bits, in the other sections of the book. So
I absolutely adore Fiore, but I use Gladiatoria as a kind of a supplement to Fiore, really, because as you surely remember, at the very beginning in the introduction to the Flower of Battle, he actually says that he learned the wonderful art of combat from numerous masters, Italian and German.
That's right.
And he also, among his students, had German students. So I thought to myself that, given the fact that between the Fior di Battaglia and the earliest known version of Gladiatoria, that there's around 20 years, it's impossible to think that the techniques represented in Gladiatoria are in no way, shape, or form similar to what Fiore was studying.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that basically all the differences we find in the medieval systems, if you want to call them systems, is almost invariably in the unarmored stuff. Yeah. And there's basically, if you looked at just the armored combat, you didn't know where the sources were from, you would probably say, oh, it's all the same thing. It's all from the same school. I mean, there isn't a lot to choose between it.
There are certain instances where you see differences that were most likely dictated by the differences in armor used. And at some points you can see that certain techniques are either phased out or they change slightly. I think the best example here is in Gladiatoria. You have a couple of techniques where you aim Mordschlag, so hitting the opponent with the pommel or the crossguard of a sword held by the blade. You hit them to the sides of the joints. So you either go for a cutter, so the cover of your elbow, or to the pollains, so the cover of the knee. But then Talhofer uses similar techniques, but instead of advising a hit, he goes for a hook. Yeah. So you go deeper, you hook the crossguard behind the knee of the opponent, and you then try to topple them. So you can see how most likely the development of the armor used during Talhofer's time made it less likely to actually inflict any serious injury on the opponent, because what I found is when you consider Gladiatoria, the first manuscript is dated to around 1430s, and if you look at the styles of armor that were popular in Germany during that time, especially the Kastenbrust style, that you can see in the paintings of Konrad Wietz, for instance, and there's a brilliant effigy of Friedrich von Nippenburg, dated 1435, that represents the complete style of Kastenbrust. And what was quite popular during that time was an assembly of cutter and pollains that had a single plate rondel that was riveted with a single rivet to the side of the elbow or to the side of the knee. So my original idea is, given the fact that that was probably the popular type of defense that gladiatoria was created for, hitting someone onto a plate held by a single rivet with a powerful stroke or powerful hit, the like of Mordschlag, was very likely to either damage or completely shear off the defense of the joint.
Right.
But then when you look at Talhoffer's manuscript, you have both the elbows and the knees made with a plate that is encapsulating the entire part of either the knee or the elbow, so hitting on the side. And we tried it. We tried it with three different types of armor, with Italian, with German, and with Italian expert. And we really hit them very hard with metal swords using Mordschlag. Nothing happened. So
wow.
to that extent, I think Talhoffer was conscious of the earlier technique and just thought to himself, it's a good idea. I can still go into the knee, but I can't damage the armor in that way. It's better to hook the opponent and to topple him and, for instance, mount him or do something else than try to hit a well-armored part with my sword.
Right, so basically the change in the technique is driven by improvements in the armor.
Yes, and that's something you can see a lot.
And Fiore's is the oldest of these sources, so one would expect his armor is the least technologically developed. Is that fair?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because we can't forget that Fiore was using Italian armor as his basis. And Italian armor, it's obviously a certain shorthand, but Italian armor was much more protective than German armor. Oftentimes. So if we consider the armor of the early 15th century used in Italy, you would never find the same ideas that you find in German armor. Even when you look at the illustrations accompanying techniques of the Flower of Battle, the protection of the upper and lower limbs is much more complete than what you can see in many Kastenbrust styles. So even though it was earlier, it was more protective.
Because Italian armor is better than German armor, and that's just a fact.
Sure.
I can't argue with that. Okay, but here's a question then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, should we say the culture of chivalry, like the chivalric classes in Europe,
mm-hmm.
they pretty much knew each other and they communicated with each other all the time. And there are examples of like a king in Portugal ordering armor from an armorer in Germany.
Yes.
Right? So the question is, if, say, in 1400, Italian armor was dramatically better than German armor, why aren't the Germans ordering Italian armor?
They are. Everyone is ordering Italian armor. But that doesn't mean that everyone is. So you have people from around Europe ordering Italian armor, because Italians, especially in the 15th century, they started dominating the armorer game. There's a lot that goes into that, but long story short, they were capable of producing the most armor at the lowest price. So the Toby Capwell writes about it in the third book on the English armor, and he says, "Yeah, sure, English armor was great and it was very distinct, but it was also incredibly expensive in comparison to Italian armor."
Right.
So the thing is, yes, you would most definitely see people in Germany using Italian armor, or rather Italian-made armor, because we know that Italians had this alla tedesca type of armor that was made for people from Germany.
Sorry, did that have the same sort of technological superiority as the German style armor? If it's made in the same style, surely it would be equally protective to armor made in Germany of the same style. But what you're describing about the knee joint is a difference in the design of the knee joint that's making the difference to protectiveness.
Yes, so Italian would be more protective.
Okay, but if they're making it in the German style, wouldn't they be copying the German design?
Not really. The German style was more stylistic. So, for instance, you would see the use of sallets instead of armets in the German style. Or you would see the use of spolders of equal size instead of asymmetrical pauldrons like in Italian style. Or you would see more fluting in later stages. So it was stylistic, however, it followed the basic ideas and designs of the Italian armor. I think that the best known example is the armor of Frederick the Victorious, well known with grand bassinet and equal sized spolders.
Okay, well, we'll put a picture of that in the show notes for people who can't just conjure up a precise image of that particular armor.
Sure. What I think we should remember is many people nowadays have this false idea about armor because we are conditioned to think in terms of modern production, where you go to a store and you have a number of set models that are mass produced, and you just choose from around those. Whereas in the Middle Ages, what you chose was very much up to your wealth, but also your personal choices. Very often, they had ideas that were failed. Like, I'm sure you know about this short-lived fad, especially in Germany, where they had chains that were attaching weapons and helmets to the breastplate. And you have a very short period of time where effigies and art of the time show a knight who has a sword on a chain, a helmet on a chain, a dagger on a chain, all of it dangling from his chest.
What was that about?
I think the idea here was not to lose your weapons in the heat of battle.
So if you drop it, you could just pull on the chain and.
That's right, absolutely. But as a practitioner of martial arts, you can surely imagine that the first thing that comes to your mind when fighting against someone like that is, why don't I just grab the chain and yank it?
Pull it. Exactly. Yes. You're basically giving your opponent all sorts of handles.
That's right.
And throttling devices.
You can imagine how horribly cumbersome that would be in wrestling. And we know that Harnischfechten, to a very large degree, is wrestling.
Yeah.
Most plays end up with you struggling on the ground with the other guy, playing the game of who gets to the dagger first.
Right, and armor works, so anything I can do with a sword from like normal striking distance isn't going to do anything to somebody wearing armor. I mean, it might scratch their helmet, but it's not going to do very much.
Yes and no. Because once again, we have to remember that people who are wearing armor weren't always wearing the best type of armor available. Sure. So if you think about common soldiers or even men at arms who didn't have the full protection or chose not to have full protection, because still in the 15th century you can see, for instance, people who have full vambraces, so the full coverage of the arm, but the shoulders are only covered with mail. So here you can imagine that a really solid strike to your shoulder with a sword,
it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt, and it can actually break something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to cut through, but you might break the clavicle.
But the blunt trauma, especially if you use something like the murder stroke.
Right.
So I think that we need to remember also, you have kettle hats, a very popular type of helmet. But if you get cut in the face while wearing a kettle hat, it doesn't
that counts. Yeah, sure.
Also, you have depictions of people going into battle, for instance, without gauntlets. So all the strikes to the hands still count. You have very often foot soldiers.
And honestly, I've lost fingernails while wearing gauntlets.
Yes.
So I mean, you're not going to get your fingers cut off very easily, but you can certainly get a finger broken through a gauntlet.
Absolutely, with a powerful strike. And the last thing we have to remember also is the quality of armor varied horribly. So if you had a very well-made sword hitting a very shoddy mail, then it could go through.
Sure. And Fiore has a bit in the poleaxe section where he claims to be able to put the point of the poleaxe through a breastplate, right? Mm-hmm. And writing in about 1400, there's about a 50-50 chance that breastplate was made out of iron rather than steel. And so actually you can do it.
Yeah. I mean, there was this brilliant two-parter made by Toby Capwell and Todd from Todd's Workshop, where they were shooting recreations of 15th century armor with a longbow.
Right.
To kind of test the limits. And in that, they tested two different breastplates. But they still recognized the fact that the first one was, the higher end available, and even the second one was kind of upper mid-tier.
Yeah.
But we have
Cheaper.
to remember, yes, but we have to remember that there were still people who couldn't afford this level of protection. Sure. Plus, even if you have a breastplate, the breastplate is actually only covering you from your neck to your navel. But below that, very often people would just have an arming jack or a male skirt. And even if your poleaxe doesn't go through the breastplate, it can slide to the side or down, and it will sure as hell go through mail. We also tested that.
I bet. Okay, so why were the Italians able to make such high quality armor so cheaply?
Because you had a number of families who were given special dispensations, special rights. They were, for instance, owners of the mines from which they would get ore, and to some extent they would have something close to monopoly.
Right. So monopoly and vertical integration.
Yes.
Right.
Plus, when you think of, for instance, England, some of those makers would, for instance, have special treatment. They wouldn't be forced to pay additional taxes. Right. They would be able to move their armor quickly to England without any extra costs. So, and their workshops were just amazingly big in comparison to what English armorers could make.
Right, so they had a big, well-organized organization.
Absolutely.
With vertical integration between the ore production and the smelting and the sort of rough work and then the finished. So they owned the whole process, and they got tax breaks.
Yes.
So they could, okay, interesting. How very modern. How very modern. Okay, so what obviously you're mad about Middle Ages, you're mad about armor, and there is a ton of material in Europe on that subject. What drew you to the English chivalric literature?
Well, the big thing about England is I absolutely love it.
Really?
Yes.
That always surprises me when I hear that.
I was always enamored with England, with English literature, with especially English Middle Ages.
Okay.
I adore Edward III and his son Edward of Woodstock.
Why?
I think that the way in which they managed to translate the romantic ideas of chivalry into a well-organized system that produced knights and men-at-arms capable of showing up a much more numerous French army.
Right.
And the whole idea of the Order of the Garter, of how they managed to create this amazing industry, wherein in the latter part of the 14th century and throughout the 15th century, we talk about something called the English alliterative revival, where you have a whole lot of English chivalric romances in alliterative verse, which, it's something we can look back for and to Beowulf. And they were creating this huge drive in the artistic expression of the English to create stories that had a real life influence, not only on people within the military profession, but also regular people. Thomas Hahn, he wrote an incredibly interesting introduction into a book that is a collection of chivalric romances featuring Sir Gawain. And he said that even during the Tudor era, you can see in the inventories and wills of wealthy merchants that they actually had books of those chivalric romances on their shelves. So
Wow.
It's something that was started during the reign of Edward III was the leading cultural note that permeated throughout the rule of Plantagenets and still managed to grasp the imagination of people during the Tudor era. And I think that's just amazing. Yes.
Yeah, I hadn't quite realized that. So basically they were writing these stories which became like the mythos of the knightly ideal.
Yes.
Which persisted for centuries.
Absolutely. And Edward III, he actually had his group of knights that he would meet with annually. And they kind of play-acted the Knights of the Round Table. So that was connected to the Order of the Garter.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind it was to create a kind of elite club for the foremost of English knights who would espouse the virtues and values of the Arthurian mode of chivalry that Edward was so fond of. And you can imagine how something like that was a huge influence on the young members of the Order of Chivalry, because you know that there is this club for the best of the best, and they meet with the king annually on the day of St. George, who is not only the patron saint of England, but also the patron saint of chivalry itself.
Right.
So in that regard, it was a brilliant PR move, and it worked so brilliantly well that we know that the King of France wanted something like that, and he actually tasked one of his greatest knights, Geoffrey de Charny, with creation of the Order of the Star, which was a straight up copy of the idea of the English Order of the Garter. And what's interesting is we have Le Livre Charny and Le Livre Chevalerie, I think it's called. So we have a book written by Geoffrey de Charny, which is kind of a manual on how to be a good knight. And we know that it was a manual created for something that was a copy of the English original.
Wow. So one question occurs to me. Mm-hmm. Edward III was obviously massively taken with the Arthurian legends.
Absolutely.
So what version of those legends was he exposed to? Do we know?
We don't know what exact version, because we have to remember that the Arthurian legends would be something very much alive and a part of the lived experience of people in the 14th and 15th century. So it's not even that he read any particular version. We have to realize that during some feasts, parties, tournaments, he would have troubadours, poets, entertainers reciting those stories.
Right. So they have the same sort of generational power as like fairy tales or nursery rhymes.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. Okay.
And we know that it was still popular during the reign of Elizabeth I. People still were very much entertained with the stories of Arthur and his knights. And obviously we know that Henry VIII was bonkers about chivalry. And I think that it really all started, as I said, with the efforts of Edward III and how he wanted to incorporate all those brilliant ideas into his mode of kingship. And I think he really did something with how amazingly his son, Edward of Woodstock, was represented in the English sources, but he was also quite respected and feared by the French. So that's something that was a huge inspiration on me, and I was absolutely fascinated with it as a kid.
It reminds me a little bit of the sort of hero worship that like Navy SEALs and SAS and stuff get these days. Mm-hmm. Where you have this sort of elite group that are all sorts of stories get told about them, not all of which are true, and you get people pretending to have been in such groups who actually weren't, and also some of the things that they managed to pull off are just astonishing. So you have, there's a bit of fact, there's a bit of fiction, but most importantly, there's a whole lot of myth.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to some extent, I'm sure there was some, PR movement and propaganda on the part of the Plantagenets. But on the other hand, there are certain things that are verifiable. Like Edward of Woodstock was 16 when he fought in the Battle of Crécy. And we know that he actually led a contingent of dismounted knights. There is a story, a brilliant story, kind of an anecdote that Froissart tells about how one of the knights from his side ran to Edward III to tell him that they are severely pressed by the French, and there's a huge group of French knights assailing them, and that young Edward, a 16-year-old boy, is there in the thick of battle. And Edward says that he won't send any more fighters because he wants the boy to win his spurs.
Wow, that is hardcore parenting.
We know that Edward was knighted at the beginning of the campaign. Obviously, he had to be, because you can't imagine a squire leading a group of knights. But you could imagine that, Edward, through that, wanted to showcase, even if it didn't really happen, right? But there is reason why the story got recorded. So probably he just didn't want it to be seen as an act of nepotism. And instead, I see Edward of Woodstock as his little pet project, right? He wanted his little perfect knight, and he wanted to show, yes, I gave him the distinction, right? I knighted him, but then he actually had to prove that he's worthy of that, or die trying.
Right. Yeah, that puts exam pressure placed on my 16-year-old daughter into some pretty sharp relief.
I actually used that story a number of times when teaching high school students. when they said, that it's so hard with the exams and so on, and I said, listen,
well,
Edward won his first military victory at your age. And
and he would have had good armour, and he would have had good knights around him.
Absolutely.
But he absolutely could have got a spear through the face. No problem.
Yes. Let's just think about Henry of Bolingbroke. Before he became Henry V, he got hit in the face with an arrow in the Battle of Shrewsbury. There is the whole brilliant story of how the king's physician had to create a special pair of pliers to remove the arrowhead from the face of the young prince. So the danger was always there. You could have the best armor your money could buy, but not to look further from England, Richard III, I'm sure, as the King of England, had the very best armor you could get, and yet he was butchered.
Yeah. And buried under a car park. Well, it wasn't a car park then, but... okay, so why Gawain in particular? What draws you to Sir Gawain?
So in my studies, I have noticed that Gawain was a pop cultural icon for the English. Whereas the French adored Sir Lancelot, the Germans were more interested in Parsifal. Gawain was most definitely the English knight. And I think the best proof of that is the sheer number of chivalric romances surviving from England that focus on Sir Gawain. And I think there's a reason for that, because Gawain, to my mind, he represents the performative mode of chivalry. He is the guy who does the fighting, right? Because Lancelot, he is this romanticized lover knight. You have Galahad, who is the Miles Christi. He is the defender of faith. He is the soldier of Christ. But Gawain is the guy who gets things done. And one of the most significant things about Gawain is in most of his outings, he's fighting someone. And very often he's fighting in formalized modes of combat. So judicial duels, for instance. Mm-hmm. And he does so either in his own name or very often as a champion of King Arthur. I'm sure that people who are not, very much into medieval literature still recognize the little romance called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yeah, everyone's heard of it, and there's even a movie about it now.
There's a number of movies, none of them is good.
Okay, well, the really new one, you've seen that?
Yes.
You hated it?
I hate it.
Oh, thank God. Okay, I know so many medievalists who absolutely fucking loved it, and I was bored rigid.
I detest it.
Okay, why?
Because I think it's completely missing the point of the original romance.
Okay.
Making it into this kind of, unrealistic dream vision-like thing / bad trip. It's completely not what it's supposed to be. I think, above all, this is actually a teachable piece of writing. And that's also why I think Gawain is very noteworthy, because very often stories that focus on him teach lessons in proper behavior, in proper conduct in battle. And you might recall that the very beginning of the romance of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight comes into Camelot, and he wants to challenge Arthur, right? Yeah. But it's Sir Gawain who says, no, I will go in your place because, I'm not that important.
Right.
And there are so many stories with Sir Gawain doing the exact same thing. someone coming to challenge Arthur, and Gawain, of his own volition, deciding to represent the king.
Yeah.
So he is the epitome of loyalty, of this bond between the king and the warrior knight, the defender of crown. And even Sir Thomas Malory, who was very obviously influenced by the French romances instead of the English, because he favors Lancelot deeply, he still has certain traces of the real Gawain. Because we know French didn't like Gawain, also the monks didn't like Gawain. The reason for it is something I will mention in a moment, but even Sir Thomas Malory has certain glimpses of the original Gawain, and one of the first times is when Gawain is engaged in a duel against Sir Morholt. He's known as the guy, fighting against Tristan. So they fight, and Sir Gawain is unhorsed, and Morholt wants to keep on fighting from horseback, and Gawain says to him, well, you can't do that. It's not how you do things. If you are fighting a formal duel against someone and you unhorse them, you have to continue fighting on foot. And if you don't do that, you risk harming your horse. It's absolutely atrocious. And what's interesting is Morholt apologizes to him, gets off his horse, and says, "Thank you for reminding me the proper conduct.
Wow.
Right? Thank you for the lesson."
Yeah.
And that's why I think that you have the whole story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, where he is tested basically on his loyalty to his host, on his proper behavior, on his gallantry, on his chivalry, and he is deeply ashamed when he cheats. And what is interesting is that the very last sentence that goes in the original manuscript is the very motto of the Order of the Garter.
Right.
So let him be ashamed because he's wrong in that.
Right. Yeah.
So to that extent, I think that if you want to understand the thought world of the English knights, Sir Gawain is the best entry into that.
Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to say is I really enjoy Sir Gawain because I think of him as kind of a medieval James Bond.
Okay.
He very often, gets things done and gets the girl.
Right.
In the chivalric romances featuring Sir Gawain, you have Lancelot pining after Guinevere, and other guys like Tristan dying for love, but not Gawain. Gawain has a new girl in virtually every story. There's an entire cycle of romances that are basically about how Gawain is such a ladies' man that he needs to be taught a lesson. there's too much womanizing going around. So you can imagine how, for English knights, he was probably their favorite character, right? He's the knight's knight, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
This butch guy who just he loves fighting, he loves the ladies, he loves the attention, and he uses every opportunity to show everyone that he is the best at what he is doing.
Right. Okay. So that's probably why the church didn't like him so much.
No, they detested him, absolutely.
Okay. So their favourite would be probably Galahad or
Yes.
Tristan.
That's right.
Okay.
And Tristan not so much because, the whole thing with King Mark and sleeping with his wife, they big on that.
But then there's an awful lot of adultery in the Arthurian romances.
That is correct, but that's the French edition, I would say. The English, they had the proper approach to chivalric romance, right? Fighting, adventures, conquering, going on a quest. None of this lovey-dovey, chasing after someone else's girl stuff.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So how how useful are these romances to a historical martial arts person, someone who wants to learn more about armour combat itself?
Some are completely useless, like Sir Thomas Malory, to a large extent, because we have to realize that many of those were either written by people who probably never saw combat in their life, or were very much generic. So they were repeating the same types of standardized descriptions over and over again. And yet, you have a number of brilliant English, Middle English romances. A good example is, for instance, The Knightly Tale of Gologras and Gawain, where you have very detailed descriptions of armed combat. You have descriptions of mass battles, you have descriptions of formal deeds of arms, and it's literally blow by blow. It almost reads like a fencing treatise, because, you know, you have this one delivered a sword stroke to this part, and the other covered on high and deflected and cleft him on this part of his armor, and in doing so he sheared 50 of his mail rings. And you have an entire brilliant description with the entire index of armor parts that are being targeted and destroyed in the course of battle. You have descriptions of the exact types of attacks that are being delivered between the knights. So, as we all know, unfortunately, there are no originally English fencing treatises from the 14th, the 15th century surviving, right? We don't have English Fiore Talhofer or
we haven't found them yet.
Yeah, or we haven't found them. But my deep belief is that if you look at the sort of entertainment that was created for the benefit of the military class, of the warrior class, and you wanted them to enjoy those, and we know, as I said, that the English absolutely loved those stories that focused on military exploits.
Right.
You can't defend an argument saying, I think that those very detailed, amazingly intricate descriptions of armed combat are just, pure imagination of the author.
Right. It's like, okay, I am the worst person in the world to go watch a sword fighting movie with, unless, of course, you come too. I think we'd be terrible. And, I saw The Knight's Tale sat between J.T. Palika, who's one of the world's best sword makers, and Lasse Mattila, who is a really, really good conservative arms and armour, right? Who knows more about armour than I ever will. And we really enjoyed the film because it made no attempt whatsoever to be in any way serious, right? But if that film had been aimed at us specifically, they would have got the details right in the same way that they do in some areas in other films.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So if these people are writing for the knightly classes, for experts in martial arts, like, if you go back to Special Forces, if somebody wrote a book about Special Forces soldiers aimed at Special Forces, they were the target audience, you would get a Special Forces person who knows what they're doing to check the book for you before you send it out to your readers, so you don't get, humiliated.
Yes.
So I mean, how could it not be accurate?
And as I said, we have to remember that, Sir Gawain was the embodiment of the English chivalry. So if he is praised in those romances as the best fighter, the embodiment of all knightly virtues in the performative mode, then, and you add the lessons to that, as I said, because in that romance I mentioned, he is preparing for an armed single combat with the best fighter of the enemy camp. and there is an elderly knight in the army of Sir Arthur, and he actually teaches him, right? And he says,
right.
Listen, if he attacks you in this way, then remember, do this thing. But if he wants to do the same thing against you, then use that against him. So it's exactly how fight books were written.
Right.
So if you wanted the original audience who surrounded Sir Gawain with almost, cult hero status, if you wanted them to buy into the idea of Sir Gawain being the best fighter, and him being at some point in dire straits because he's fighting against the very best of the opposing side, and you want to sell them on this dramaticism, it has to be realistic. They have to recognize real plays, real actions and attacks for the whole thing to be entertaining.
Yeah, of course. And how does that stuff line up with what we find in the fight books?
It lines up amazingly. I have found literal translations, almost one-to-one, of a couple of plays from Fiore and from Gladiatoria in those romances.
Okay, so I have to ask, have you published this?
No, I'm currently working on a book.
Okay, well, I was going to say, so what are you working on at the moment? Okay, tell us about your book.
So, I have published a couple of articles, actually, written a couple of articles because a number of them are still waiting to be published. On the side note, I'll just say that it's really hard to find someone in modern academic journals who would be actually interested in publishing that sort of stuff. Because you have the division between, history and literary studies. But if you walk in and you say, so I'm reading those romances, and now I'm going to show you how I compared them with information from fighting treatises and documents on, records of actual formal combat, I get responses of, yes, that's very interesting. However, we will not pursue publishing it because it doesn't fit the idea of our journal.
Which is funny because the interdisciplinarity is so fashionable these days that surely so. Literature and history, most history comes from literature.
Yes.
History is mostly based on written sources.
That's right.
So what the hell?
I don't know. Beats me.
Okay. So tell us about your book.
Yes. So I decided that, I'll collect all those findings, and I'm still very much in course of research, right? I haven't finished. Yeah. I'm reading into those things. I have found a lot of interesting things, and I have already started writing. But basically, the whole idea is trying to show how those Middle English romances can serve as a type of a record of English martial arts, or of how they could have been used as a vehicle to translate certain lessons that might otherwise have been found in fight books. Because we have to remember that even though we have a plethora of surviving fight books, it was still something that was incredibly rare. Once again, if we come back to Fiore, he himself said that he didn't even think about writing any of his teachings down. It was one of his students, Galeazzo de Mantova, who came to him and said, listen, master, maybe you should write all those things down.
Okay, I just have to say this. I had the same experience. The only reason I wrote my first book is because one of my students asked me to. But anyway. Not to compare myself with Fiore, of course, but sorry, carry on.
Fiore says that actually this student of his was the only student he had that owned a fight book. Right? And he taught a number of knights of probably, well socially situated individuals who could afford to have a book like that, yet they didn't. So my thought is, especially, given strong connections between England and Italy, and to a lesser extent in England and Germany, it's impossible to think that English knights didn't know about those martial systems, and I'm sure some of them studied them and brought them back home. So, to my mind, the best, easiest way to spread the awareness, to spread those teachings to the widest, greatest audience of the time, was to incorporate them into those narratives, into those popular stories. Because if a member of the court of King Arthur teaches Sir Gawain, who was the greatest knight, how to deal with someone who is attacking you in single combat or in mounted battle scenario in a given way, and it actually makes sense, right? Because when you compare it to what Fiore, for instance, shows on Reenactment, so fighting on horseback, it very much interlocks, right? So my idea basically is to find all of those traces, to compare them with known fight books, but also known records of actual single combat we have from the time period, and show how that combination of literature and martial arts could help us do something more for the understanding of English chivalry. To some extent, I was inspired by the work of Toby Capwell, who wanted to shed more light on the English style of armor. So I would like to do the same for the English martial arts.
Fantastic. Okay, so I have to ask, when do you think the book is going to come out?
That's a very complicated question. I mean, I want to devote the next 2 months to working on it, but then it's a case of finding a publisher, getting all the technicalities behind publishing a book, and as it's going to be my first book, there is a lot of testing to go into that.
Of course. Okay, I have a question. Do you want the book to, if you're going to use it to kind of further your career, it needs to be published by an academic press.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
But if you want to actually make money from it, you should probably publish it yourself.
Actually, my idea was first to publish it through an academic publisher for the requirements of my academic work, and then tweak it, add maybe a couple of things that are of more interest to people who are very much into historical martial arts, but maybe not that much into academic stuff, and publish a second version for the general audience. That's the
I just had a thought. My thought is, you could write it out as a second PhD, because that would give you like the structure and like the external assistance from academia, like all the sort of the pushback you get from supervisors, and it would help you craft the scholarship, and it would give you a super easy way to get it technically published. Because like all PhD theses are published by the university that grants the degree.
Not in Poland.
No?
No.
I mean, in Edinburgh, I had to supply the university with like 2 or 3 copies of my thesis for their libraries. So that's what I don't mean they actually publish it and like sell it in bookshops. I mean, it's recorded as yours, and it's in a library somewhere.
Okay.
Right?
So
So that's what I mean. I didn't mean like they put it out as a book. And then then you have basically all the scholarship done, all the work is done, and you know it's done to the necessary level because it has been properly examined. And then just smooth it out, rewrite it a little bit, tweak it about, make it a bit more accessible. And there you have your thing that you could publish yourself.
That's more or less the plan, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think you need to get on with it though, because I want to read it.
I'm really giving it my best. I never had trouble devoting myself wholeheartedly to writing, so I'm capable of writing 8-10 hours straight every day.
Wow, I'm not. I'm maxed out at about 3 or 4.
Okay, so I hope that I will manage to finish this year. Hopefully, before the summer is done, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, if you need any help in any aspect of the book production side of things, I do all that stuff myself. Yeah, do. Absolutely do. Anything I can do to help midwife this book out into the world, I would be doing the community a favour, and also doing myself a favour, because then I get to read it.
I will absolutely take you up on that.
Good, do. And yes, and listeners, you can thank me when it comes out because it sounds really exciting. It's like, how cool is that? Like, you have these sources that should give us a picture of medieval combat in England. Like, 14th century stuff is just genius. Like, it's a window we didn't know was there.
And hopefully, it shows certain parts of the academia that there is a real merit to marrying academic research with hands-on practical experience in HEMA.
That's another thing. Like, I was quite I had to sort of wiggle about a bit and sort of be inventive in my approach to get Edinburgh University to accept because my PhD is basically based on 3 of my books, and it's explicitly about the reconstruction of the practical art, not just the academic stuff, but and how do we incorporate this information we get from getting stabbed in the face by our friends? Right? And they are, I use the word interdisciplinary a lot. And that apparently was quite helpful, I'm told by my supervisor. So, it's obvious to us that the practice informs the research informs the practice, and if you do it right, you get a virtuous cycle that just perpetuates, and the practice will tell you where to go to look for the next thing, and the research will tell you what to practice next, and round and round and round it goes, right? And that's obvious to us that do it, but not so obvious to people whose entire world is a library.
Because, that kind of goes against the typical traditional approach to the academia. I think, some people might kind of laugh at that, seeing an Indiana Jones complex.
Well, okay, let me just show you this. It's right here. Okay. Here is a proper bullwhip. And here is my jacket. And my jacket was made, right, by Peter Botwright, who made the jackets for the movies. Right? So this is same material, same design. Like, this is the proper Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark jacket from the factory where they made them for the films. Like, yes. And you think academics think that's a bad thing?
I mean, yes and no, right? Because I have met with very warm reception, especially in my university, where the people I work with are really welcoming to new ideas, and they are really happy when someone comes up with something new, and I met with only positive reception and people cheering me on, but when I talked to some of the Western academics, there was a conference last year that I attended a medievalist conference, and there was one notable American scholar who, upon learning what I do, said that it's very curious. However, he thinks it would be frowned upon at his university because people there look with suspicion on academics who are too practical in
That's insane. They obviously haven't met Daniel Jacquet. Do you know Daniel?
No.
You don't know Daniel Jacquet?
No, unfortunately not.
He's a Swiss academic. He's the guy that did an assault course run with him in armour and a fireman in full firefighting gear and a soldier. Yeah, he's the guy in the armour. I interviewed him for this show, and he does academic research into the practical uses of armour. Like, for instance, they did this study on the forces involved in wearing armour and running in armour and doing various things. And he actually demonstrated that in certain circumstances, there are ranges of motion that the armour allows that you can't get without it because the weight of the armour creates the range of motion, right? Stuff like that. So, okay, I will very happily introduce you when we come off the interview because I think you guys would get on really well.
Right. So, a little confession here on how I'm received at my university. Recently, literally last week or 2 weeks ago, I learned that behind the scenes, behind my back, the dean, the people who work at the university, they all refer to me as the Knight. They don't even use my name.
That's great.
So to that extent, I think I found the right place, the right university to practice what I do. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making a note to email Daniel and put you guys in touch because you have so much in common, and particularly. Like, he has a PhD in this stuff as well, and he is doing academic research and using like the structures of academia for historical martial arts purposes. So yeah, I think you two could. Well, I mean, imagine if you show up at a conference and you're the only guy in armour, you look a bit odd. But if you both show up to a conference in armour, right, from two separate universities, it starts to be less of the lone weirdo and starts being, actually, there's more than one university that tolerates this sort of stuff. Maybe we should.
I actually did that once. I attended a conference in my armour, yes.
How was that received?
There was an uproar, but positive one.
Right.
There was a lot of interest. At some point, I was actually asked by one of the panelists to teach her the basics of longsword fighting.
Oh, fantastic!
She was really into that. And she absolutely loved it when I told her that she can bash onto the sword I gave her anywhere she wants on my armor to show her that it really works. Right. Oh, she loved it. She was giggling all the way.
Fantastic. And, I think real medievalists, given the chance to actually handle armor, they love it.
Yeah.
It's like
what's not to love?
Who wouldn't? Okay, so speaking of armor, there are quite a few people listening, I would imagine, who would quite like to get into armoured combat, and they see a beautiful suit of armour and they go, oh my god, I want that. And then they look into what it's going to cost and they realise that that's like a year's salary. And so they're put off from the whole project. So how would you suggest people get into armoured combat if they don't happen to have a trust fund and a Bentley and a Rolex and all that lot?
So, first of all, my current armor that I absolutely love to bits, it's my fourth. And that's the first one I'm really satisfied with. So it only goes to show that there is a lot of work that goes into assembling a proper kit. But to those people who would like to be to get into fighting in armor, I would say just go into a club that teaches you fighting in armor, because we in our club, for instance, we allow people who have just the basic soft kit, even the Blossfechten one, to come to classes and to start the movement, right? To learn the movement. And you don't have to have the entire armor straight away. No one needs that. The first thing that everyone needs is, as I said, a soft kit, a foundation garment, one properly made. Don't buy one off the rack, because, for Blossfechten, for unarmored combat, the off-the-rack things are a-okay.
Yeah.
Like most, modern sports gear, they are very good. But you have to remember that how well you move in armor and how well the armor works is largely dependent on how well the foundation works. And it has to be tailor-made for you. Side note, it's a brilliant incentive not to gain weight.
Do you know, okay, right, I'm going to Kansas next week to do wrestling stuff with Jessica Finley. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to wear my arming jacket that I got made when I bought armor. The first thing I bought, as you recommend, although we didn't know each other then, was a tailor-made arming jacket for hanging the armor on.
Yes.
Right? And basically it fits so tight. It's like skin, but I can move pretty much the same as I can move without it on. Mm-hmm. And it's got all these attachment points for the armor, and particularly the waist is super tight. So anything hanging off the jacket is hanging on my waist.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. It's fantastic. Okay. And I got that made about, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I tried it on last weekend. I was like, oh shit, I've got a week to lose about 6 kilos. Because that fucking thing does not fit around my waist anymore.
Yeah, that's one of the main things that leads my physical workouts. Right. I try to keep fit and to keep my body at peak condition, but without gaining anything or without losing anything. So, as I said, the foundation garment, absolutely the most important part. Then you get helmet and upper limbs protection.
Okay.
Why those two? One, fencing mask is good to begin with and not to get hit in the face, but it tells you nothing about the limitations of vision and respirations that you have to face in a helmet.
Yeah.
So a properly made helmet, incredibly important.
Yeah.
And upper limbs, gauntlets are the most important part because I see many people trying to use those plastic
horrible
gauntlets.
No,
the
I hate those things so much.
They are overbuilt. They are
and they are shit even for unarmored longsword stuff. They have no place in existence. Just use steel gauntlets. I have a pair of steel gauntlets I've had since about 2004. And they're fantastic. I've replaced a couple of leather bits. I've replaced the gloves a couple of times, but yeah, they last forever, and they cost me about €250.
Yeah. So gauntlets are incredibly important because one thing you have to realize is, contrary to Blossfechten, because if you enter a longsword tournament, rapier tournament, saber tournament, whatever, right? You fight with this one weapon. Harnischfechten, no. You have your primary weapon. That would be a pole arm, usually, but then you either lose it, you discard it, you throw it at the opponent, then you use your sword, and then you have the dagger. So you have to be capable of indexing your weapons quickly, of grabbing them, of changing the way you hold them, because especially in poleaxe, you have a lot of changes in how you grasp the pole, how you have, thumbs facing the same side, the thumbs facing the head, all of the gymnastics that go around with it. And if you don't have properly made gauntlets, if you have this huge bulk of plastic, it's impossible to do anything properly.
Correct. I couldn't agree more.
And the vambraces, because you have to learn how armor makes you move. I think that, you can train Harnischfechten a long time without leg harness, because it doesn't really change that much, but the way the biomechanics change with a full arm upper limb protection is incredible. As you said, right? It weighs you down, but it also adds certain things.
Yeah.
So the way you operate weapons, but also the way your body reacts to grappling, to holds, to arm bars, what you can and cannot do with the opponent and opponent's weapon, it's all very much connected to upper limb armor. So I would say that if someone wants to start training, first go for soft kit, right? The foundation garment, and train the very basics, the movement, because you have to learn, for instance, how to use half swording. It's not something that everyone just gets instantly. Then get yourself a helmet and gauntlets and upper limb armor without the shoulders. Because even in Fiore, you have techniques shown with guys protecting the shoulders only with mail sleeves.
Right.
So you can train for a long time with only mail sleeves covering your shoulder and no plate there, and it's still reflective of how many men-at-arms use those techniques. And then, torso, shoulders, and the lower limbs are the last thing. So, yes, a properly tailored armor is expensive, but hey, you don't have to go for high Gothic or for full Milanese armor. If you consider, for instance, the armor worn at the end of the 14th century, it's much more affordable. It has smaller pieces, simpler pieces, so things that are much less expensive and are easier to collect.
Okay.
That's what
Excellent.
I say.
Yeah, that's good advice. I know that some people are going to be like, Guy, you've got to ask this question, because I know my listeners quite well. And some of them are thinking, okay, so what the hell does he do to train? To stay the same shape as much as possible? Could you just briefly survey your training routine?
So the funny thing is, when I was an MA student, I got really into physical fitness, and I actually got certified as a fitness instructor. So I have my own diet, I have my own workout routine in the gym, and I have devised a kind of a workout schedule that is created for the requirements of armored fighting. I have used certain, bodybuilding techniques, modified others, added some conditioning that is purely connected with armor, like running intervals in my helmet.
Right.
And it has proven to work very well throughout the years.
Okay, so what does your a week's routine look like?
Okay, so usually on Mondays I do gym. Sometimes on Tuesday too, but different.
So what are you doing in the gym?
The thing is, I never do the same exact workout twice.
Me neither.
In a span of a week, but also I try not to repeat the same things in a span of 2 or 3 weeks. So I focus on the same parts of the body. So for instance, shoulders or chest or back, but I attack them with different sets of exercises because I don't want to get used.
You don't want to get... Sorry,
I don't want to get used to certain exercises. Right?
Okay. So you don't want to become accustomed to the exercise.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So to improve hypertrophy and to challenge myself for the requirements of armed combat, I mainly train with weights. So I don't really do machines. Yeah. And I combine intervals such as kettlebells are amazing. Yes. Absolutely. Yes, sure. And I think it's very important that there's this protocol called reps in reserve. So basically, instead of thinking to yourself, okay, I'll do 8 movements every time when I do this exercise, or 10 movements in 4 reps. You never do that. You when you do the reps in reserve, you work out up to a point when you feel that you would probably be able to do 2 or 3 movements of the same type, and that would be the limit of your capabilities.
Right.
And in every rep, you do the same thing. So the first rep, when you're fresh, could be 16. The second could be 14. The third could be 10. The fourth could be 8.
So each set has the number of reps that leaves you a little bit in the tank.
That's right.
That's an interesting way to do it. Okay.
It's a protocol that is well researched because I try to keep afloat the latest research. I read what they publish on the topic, and it has proven to be a good protocol for hypertrophy, but it also I think it's safer because if you monitor yourself and instead of pushing yourself because you feel you need to do those 2 additional movements to fulfill your plan, you work with more of a sync with your body, and you think to yourself, okay, so I'm tired, right? That's how much I can do in the last rep, and it's good because the fact that I feel soreness in my muscles means that the previous reps were challenging enough and my muscles did the work.
Right. Okay.
So that's the basic protocol I follow.
Okay. So that takes us to Monday. What happens on Tuesday?
Okay. So Tuesday is usually more of an interval. I love the Tabata protocol. Okay. So 20 seconds of very intensive workout, 10 seconds of break, 20 seconds of workout, and so on and so forth. And I add to that interval boxing and interval running. Okay. When I run, I use a breathing mask, a mask that basically...
Because you're a masochist.
Yes. I mean, those are quite funny because I remember years ago they were advertised as, something that would be comparable to you working out in the mountains.
Yeah, right. It's, altitude trainers.
Yes. It's absolute bullcrap. They don't. But
no.
If you want to prepare to the oxygen exhaustion that you experience in a helmet, they are brilliant because basically you can cut off oxygen intake.
Yeah.
And also you have to breathe in much harder and much deeper for the mask to let some oxygen in. So it teaches you to have a more regular, deeper breathing, and you don't hyperventilate, because many people who start in armor, who are not experienced, after a couple of minutes, they start choking and they gasp for air. And that's not something you should do in armor.
No.
And sometimes, if there are not many gym patrons, and I don't scare many people, I actually take a helmet into my gym bag and I put it on and I run intervals with it.
Excellent. Okay. That's Tuesday.
Yes, that's Tuesday. Now, Wednesday is Harnischfechten classes. So it's about an hour and a half in armor. Depending on the week, we either focus on pure technical training, or we mix it up with some light sparring. But still, we do all of that in full kit. And I stress fighting in closed visor as much as possible.
To get used to it.
Yes, we pretty much only open our visors to discuss things, because we know that communicating effectively wearing a closed visor is not the easiest way in the easiest thing in the world. But we are, conditioning ourselves with the closed helmets. So that's Wednesday evening. Thursday morning is weight training. Friday is rest. Saturday is the sparring day. Not every week, unfortunately, but you know how it is.
Sure.
Trying to organize a group of guys, many of whom have kids and so on. Not that easy, but we try to meet at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. So we get to the club at around 9 or 10 a.m. We don the armor and we fight duels as long as there is anyone capable of remaining standing. So it's up to 3 hours in harness. And then we really go through the whole thing. So we use spears, poleaxes, swords, we do grappling, we do dagger fighting, everything that goes. And Sunday is either weightlifting or a rest.
Okay, so how is that weightlifting different to what you do in the gym?
So the weightlifting I do, as I said, it is a combination of regular gym lifting, but as you, for instance, have shown me your collection of kettlebells, I do certain compound movements and certain collections of sequences of movement that are meant to activate the same muscle groups that go into fighting. So, such as, for instance, I take a barbell, this kind of a lighter, not Olympic barbell, not something you would use to train.
Yeah, that's a 20 kilo bar.
No. The ones I use are, I think, 12 kilos.
Okay.
And I put around 2.5 kilos on one side.
Right.
I grab it as I would a poleaxe, and I practice movements from poleaxe techniques in a controlled manner, not swinging wildly the way I would a weapon.
But go slowly through it so you're supporting the motion.
Yes.
Yeah, that is fucking brutal.
Absolutely.
I have done similar things myself. It's great fun.
So those things are, or for instance, I put weight bands on my forearms, and I take a sword, I add a weight band onto it, and I go slowly through techniques, both half-swording and the Blossfechten.
And by weight band, you mean like the kind of thing that they sell to like put around your ankles if you go running.
Yes.
Not that you should do that, but that sort of thing. Okay, like a weighted
that sort of thing.
strap.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because, putting your entire harness just to do 30 minutes of slow practice wouldn't make much sense.
No.
But if you're not swinging wildly, but you are doing it that in a very, slow, controlled manner, controlling the tension in the muscles and so on, I have discovered it to be very helpful
Right.
for
And it's. I mean, you said you used to do choreo stuff. I've seen similar things done by choreo practitioners with like a special weighted sword that was like deliberately built to be like twice as heavy as the real thing.
I have my Bochert sword, which is
which is already twice as heavy as the real thing. Okay.
Because as you probably know, the weapons in Bochert, I wouldn't really call them weapons. They are bars of metal, crudely shaped, glorified bars of metal. So the sword I used for Bochert, it weighs almost 3 kilos.
Oh God!
So it's ungodly weight.
It's about twice the weight it should be.
Yes, absolutely. And it actually, at some point, it broke. So it's shorter than it used to be, and also lighter.
Oh my Lord! Right. So, and you maintain this sort of training regime pretty much every week through the year.
Yes. I haven't had a week's break since I don't remember when. Even in the COVID pandemic, I would do the same things in my apartment.
Yeah, right. Sure. Okay. So that's a pretty intense physical regime. If you had to pick like one element of it, what would you pick?
To recommend or to keep doing?
Because here's the thing. Almost nobody is going to go, oh, actually, that sounds like a totally reasonable program. I'm going to do that, right? But if we can get them started with maybe one of those things, then get used to that, and then they might add the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. So if you're going to pick one thing, I'm thinking I would probably go with the wind sprints with a helmet on. That would be my go-to thing, probably.
What would you say? If we are dealing with someone who is already used to wearing armor. Because if someone just got a helmet, that's the best way to but also that's the best way to lose consciousness on a treadmill.
Yeah, true.
So not a good idea. If I were to choose anything off of all the things I told you about, it would be the sparring.
Okay.
That's something that I would highly recommend to anyone, because I think many people, be that in living history, be that in Buchur, be that in Hima, they too often focus on going to an event and only then using the armor, whereas they should live with it, right? Get used to it. The armor should be your second skin.
I mean, back when I was training with my armor in Finland, I would like wear my cuirass and arms to teach classes, including like rapier classes. Right? It doesn't matter what I was teaching; I'd be wearing that to get used to wearing it.
Absolutely. And when I say sparring, right? I don't mean going full on, because as I said, 2-3 hours, you wouldn't be able to keep it up if you were using your entire strength and power throughout. No, what I mean is go out there with the other guys or girls and just go through the motions, right? Start light, start with maybe choose, for instance, 2 or 3 techniques that are only allowed and focus on a very technical sparring, where everyone is looking for the opening, and then you are learning not only how to use the openings of your opponent, but what's even more important, you learn about your own openings, because that's hugely important. And that's something we have to remember, because, very many people, when they look at medieval armor, they think to themselves, oh, it makes no sense. Why would they fight with a gap here? Or why would they fight with an raised visor? Well, they knew that's the opening.
Yeah.
So if you know that, you know how to protect it, and what's even more important, you know how to use it. Because there are techniques, especially armored fighting techniques, where you actually want to trigger a certain response from your enemy. And for instance, you raise your arms to show your armpit, because you want to provoke the opponent to try to stab you there, and you have a ready counter for that.
Right.
So,
so you're using gaps in the armor as invitations.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. And this is very similar to boxing.
Sure.
Like when you think of the Philly stance, right, with the uncovered chin and your left hand grasping your torso. You are inviting the opponent to hit your face, right? It's here, it's open, go for it. But you're prepared, it's a trap.
Of course.
And those things you can only learn if you practice in armor, if you spend a lot of time in it.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, now I have a couple of questions that I ask almost all of my guests.
Sure.
And the first is, what is the best idea you haven't acted on yet? Other than your book, which you are acting on.
Yes, I am very much acting on it. I mean, two things that come to my mind. One is somehow connected to my deep love for English Middle Ages. So I had this idea years ago, and I was actually trying to do that. I really wanted to visit the Canterbury Cathedral in full armor. And go to the... Yes, I've been there on a couple of occasions. That was the first time I went there. It was a tremendous experience because, as I said, I idolized Edward of Woodstock. So, being there next to his effigy, that was a brilliant thing. But I wanted to make it more chivalric, and I wanted to, go to him in my armor. Unfortunately, things fell through, and I didn't get acceptance from the powers that be, and I couldn't go there. They just didn't allow me.
Did you ask first?
Yes, I did.
Oh, huge mistake.
Okay.
If you just show up in the armor, and it's clearly, and you just walk in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What
are they going to do? Because the thing is, if you ask them for permission and they grant permission and you turn out to be a lunatic who does something inappropriate in the armor, then they are liable. But if you just show up as a member of the public wearing these clothes and just walk in, so long as you behave in a calm and respectful manner, which I'm no doubt you would, what are they going to say?
I might just try it someday.
Yeah, I tell you what, if that happens, let me know, and if I can make it, I'll come with you.
All right.
And if somebody, I say, hello, yes, I am Dr. So-and-so, and this is Dr. and yeah, isn't it absolutely right? And I can distract them with sort of English bullshit while you go off and have a gentle word with Edward.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I love it.
Okay. Yeah, but it's always better to get forgiveness than permission.
All right. And the second thing is, I think I mentioned that when we last talked. I really want to one day collect a set of armors representatives of the harnesses used in all the major fight books. And recreate every single plate from those fight books in the
correct armor.
In correct armor, yes.
Okay,
that's my dream.
That may take a while, and assistant professors of English literature don't make that kind of money, so you can't just
not
buy
even
it.
remotely, no.
But, I mean, there may be ways to do it that doesn't involve necessarily buying all that armour. I mean, that would be nice to have, but there are lots of armour combat people who are madly interested in the treatises. You might be able to organise it sort of piecemeal, like you've got this armour, they've got that armour, so you get together one weekend and go through these things and take photographs and stuff.
That's true. However, I think having all of those is crazy.
It's part of it. Yeah, but it's gateway drugs. I'm a big fan of, if you have a goal that is yay high and hard to reach, if you can find the next small step that takes you in that general direction, that's more likely to lead to the step after that, and then eventually the step after that, and the way up you go. It's like the whole business of, people getting into armour. They don't start by spending the cost of a decent car, brand new decent car, on harness. They start with an arming jacket, tailor-made. And that's maybe that's going to take them 6 months to save up for, right? But that's where they start. And then the next piece, a helmet maybe, that's probably going to take them a year to save up for. But in 18 months' time, they've got the jacket and they've got the helmet and they're super happy. And now they're thinking about gauntlets, for instance, right? Yeah, go ahead.
I think one thing we should add, because I forgot, but it's immensely important. If someone wants to have a proper harness and, for proper historical combat, don't go for so-called sports optimized. That's right. a euphemism used in Buchurt for armor that is subpar and ahistorical and overbuilt and not made to be remotely representative of the historical originals. So it's better to save up and have a proper thing done, one that is representative of what you actually see in museums or in historical art, rather than buying something cheaply that has a high probability of actually hurting you.
Do you know, funny story. My first suit of armour I have made by a Czech smith who had done other stuff for me in the past. I won't name him because the story doesn't turn out too well for him. And I sent off my measurements and everything. And because of the way things were done, I ended up getting sent the armour without actually having a proper fitting. Okay. You know how greaves fit your leg like a skin? And so the whole weight of the greave is kind of held on the calf muscle, pretty much.
That's right.
Right? And it doesn't kind of fall down onto your ankle.
No.
Okay. I actually tried this. I could fit a bottle of wine down the back of each greave. That's how badly it fit, right? And I took it to a friend of mine in Finland who is a very good armourer. And the metal was so shit that he couldn't weld it properly. So he couldn't, he managed to make a few adjustments, but he couldn't really work with it properly because there was too much sulfur in the steel. Right. So, fortunately, I ended up selling it for about what I paid for it to the opera house in Helsinki. So if you see a suit of armour on stage in an opera in Helsinki, and no one's wearing it, it's just like standing there on the stage, it's probably my old armour. And then I started then going the piecemeal, find a good armourer and get one thing made. And then the next thing made, and so on like that. So, yes, yeah. I've done it the wrong way, so I know you're right.
That's part of the reason why I object to calling most of what you can see in Buchurt armor. I think that sports defenses, sports protection is something.
Or you could call it Buchurt armor.
Yeah, but
like the armor on an arm. Yeah, but the armour on an armoured car is armour on an armoured car, and that's right. Not confusing. And the armour that soldiers wear, like, sniper plates and whatnot, that's armour, and it's what soldiers wear. And the armour that fighters wear to do Buchurt, that's Buchurt armour, and that's its own thing. And then there's historical armour.
I wouldn't fully agree, because the problem is... it's a bit predatory, I think, sometimes, because there are many people who just don't know the difference. And if you are a complete beginner, a Buchurt armor is close enough to your, mind's eye image of a knight that you could be duped into believing it's proper armor. That's why I don't like calling it armor very often, because I think if you call it, protection or defenses or guard or whatever, it has this sports association that is much closer to what Buchurt actually is. Okay. And, I did Buchurt for a very long time. I started in 2007. I was a part of the Battle of the Nations and IMCF from the very beginning, and I really enjoyed the sport, but as a sport. Yeah. And what I really don't like is people conflating history with Buchurt. Buchurt is very much a modern sport. It's a great sport, very entertaining. I think for many people it could be a great entry into historical combat. It sure was for me, because I didn't know about HEMA when I was starting. But, trying to sell it as a representation of medieval battle just rubs me the wrong way.
Well, it's the same. I feel the same way about SCA heavy combat stuff, the rattan sticks and whatever. Mm-hmm. It's its own thing. It's a great thing. It's a fantastic gateway drug into historical martial arts. And I'm super glad it exists. And I'm just sorry I didn't come across it until I was well into historical martial arts, because if I found it much earlier, I'd have had a great time bashing my friends with these rattan sticks. But the moment someone refers to it as medieval combat, I get very irritable, because it's not the same thing. Okay, so leaving that aside, my last question. Mm-hmm. Somebody gives you $1 million, euros, pounds, gold coins, or whatever, and unusually for this podcast, I'm actually going to place a restriction on what you can spend it on. You can't spend it on armor for your collection, okay? Right?
Oh, shit.
But to use it to spend, you can spend it on improving historical martial arts worldwide. Mm-hmm. So with the you can't improve your armor collection caveat, how would you spend it?
Well, I actually have a couple of ideas, because some time ago I started working with my armorer friend, who is a brilliant expert, Radosław Ciszewski. He is one of the absolute foremost armorers in the world, bar none. Radoslaus, the armorer to the Western public. And I started working with him on accessible Harnischfechten kits. So something that would be representative of the kind of munitions grade armor you could expect from a medieval man-at-arms, but something that would be easy to manufacture, and that could be bought by clubs. For the time being, I want my club to buy a couple of sets, to have something to offer to a newcomer who wants to try it. Sure. Because, when someone comes to our club and says, I would like to try longsword, I would like to try sword and buckler, rapier, we have a bunch of fencing masks, we have a bunch of safe training weapons, some, padded jacks and so on. And they can get into that much quicker.
Yeah.
And I think that if there was an available set of easily adjustable armor, because even in Middle Ages, the munition grades armor would come in small, medium, and large, right?
Yeah,
and so you can use the basic ideas that existed back in the Middle Ages, but have something waiting there, so that someone comes to your club, they already start training with armor, they feel the weight of it, they feel the limitations, they can have something that is a proper helmet on their head, while they are working their way up to their own kit.
Right.
So I think that the first thing I would invest in is developing something like that and offering it to clubs around the world, because I think that would do wonders to people coming in and staying in.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And the second thing that comes to my mind is, to promote historical fighting. To promote it in two ways. I think that I'm sure you are aware of a group. I will probably butcher their name, but I think it's Adorea. They have a YouTube channel, and they have a bunch of very entertaining videos, choreographed fights with different historical weapons that they kind of dramatize, but they use historical fighting techniques, and they present those in those cinematic choreographies. They had a brilliant one with long swords and so on. So I would make a couple of well-produced videos of this sort, showing the potential of actual historical armored combat. Because I think that if people saw how brilliantly visceral and entertaining the real stuff, not what you can see in, Renaissance Fair or Buchurt tournament, how the real stuff looks like, then people would respond to that. More people would want to do that, and hopefully even, Hollywood would think to themselves, that actually looks splendid. Why not add that to the next movie? Because it looks much more entertaining than people just bashing their heads with bars of metal, like in the atrocity that was Last Duel.
Yeah. Let's not even go there. I mean, I interviewed an expert on that dueling period called Dr. Ariella Ellemer in episode about 99 or 100, and there were one or two historical inaccuracies in that film, one or two, some slight inaccuracies, but okay. Wouldn't it be nice if Hollywood producers afforded the same respect to historical martial arts as they often afford to Asian martial arts? Like,
Absolutely.
When Tom Cruise was training for The Last Samurai, he was getting a proper Koryu swordsmanship instructor was coming to his house regularly and giving him lessons in how to swing a katana properly.
Yeah.
Right? And why don't they do that for,
but notice, it comes from the love and devotion of Akira Kurosawa, because he created the brilliant series of movies that stood as a monument to the Japanese martial arts, and that ignited West's interest, and that interest was later translated in how Asian martial arts are still perceived in the West. But He-Man never had its Akira Kurosawa. We didn't have someone who was such a devoted student, someone who would so lovingly craft a representation of proper European historical martial arts into a movie.
So your short movies would be intended to inspire that future historical martial arts.
That's right.
Akira Kurosawa. That's a genius idea. Brilliant. Well, if I had the money, I'd give it to you.
I appreciate that.
Although I would probably put it in an escrow account or whatever and have it filter through so it wouldn't end up in your armor collection, because I know what you armor people are like.
I would probably find a way to explain to you that it's absolutely vital to the project that I get at least one armor.
I think that's fair enough. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Przemysław. It's been lovely to talk to you again.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we get to do it again in the future.
Well, when your book comes out, you're definitely coming back on the show.
All right. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. You can find the episode show notes at swordschool.com/podcast, where you will find transcriptions, photos, videos, and links for this episode. You can find a direct link to the show notes for this episode in the description. Join us next week for another cracking conversation. See you then.